Welcome to this explainer on the architecture of adaptability. Today, we're diving into the invisible but totally vital threads tying together human biology, our surrounding environment, and the actual physical buildings we inhabit. You know, if you've ever walked into a room and felt instantly energized, or on the flip side, felt completely drained by a sterile gray office, well, you already intuitively grasp exactly what we're about to unpack. We are going to bridge this incredible gap between microscopic organisms and macroscopic cityscapes. Let's get right into it.
So I want you to start by asking yourself this. What if true health isn't just the absence of disease? Really think about that for a second. For the longest time, we've treated health as this static, perfect state. It's kind of a binary checklist, right? You're either sick or you're healthy. You have a virus or you don't. But what if that conventional definition is just completely missing the bigger picture? What if health is actually something way more demanding, super active, and deeply connected to the literal spaces around us?
To figure that out, we look to the renowned microbiologist and environmentalist René Dubos. In his monumental 1965 book, Man Adapting, he completely flipped the script on how we view well-being. He defined health as the expression of the success or failure experienced by the organism in its efforts to respond adaptively to environmental challenges. So the crucial point is, he's basically telling us, health is not a destination. It's not a finish line. It's an ongoing, active response to literally whatever the world throws at you.
To really appreciate the weight of this, we kind of have to remember the era Dubos was writing in. The mid-20th century was absolutely intoxicated by the promise of technological mastery. The prevailing vibe, this mechanistic reductionism, basically looked at the human body like a machine that just needed to be isolated, fixed, and sterilized. But Dubos completely called out this illusion of isolation. He argued we are never just passive recipients of external forces, not at all. Instead, we are active participants in an endless, ongoing dialogue with our environment. You simply cannot separate the human from the habitat.
And because our environments, both our social circles and our physical spaces, are constantly shifting, our adaptation has to be a never-ending journey. The big takeaway here is that health is a dynamic expression of continuous, multi-layered adaptation. It is definitely not a static endpoint. When our adaptive responses fail against some environmental challenge, well, that's when pathology and sickness kick in. But when those responses succeed, we achieve this beautiful, dynamic, temporary equilibrium. And that is what we recognize as true health and well-being.
Okay, let's dive into this and actually prove the theory with a bit of a telescopic zoom. We're going to shift from these grand abstract theories of human ecology all the way down into the invisible, microscopic biological world. And then we'll zoom completely back out to the concrete cities we live in. It is a wildly fascinating shift in scale, so stick with me here.
See, Dubos was first and foremost a brilliant microbiologist, and he used his specialized research on the digestive tract to illustrate these massive ecological principles. Trillions, that's the number of microbes inside the human gut. Actually, fun fact, bacterial cells outnumber human cells in your body, which is kind of crazy to think about. But Dubos demonstrated that these microbes, they don't just coexist with us like passive little hitchhikers. They form a highly complex, totally interdependent micro-ecosystem that negotiates continuously with you, their host. And this internal ecosystem is incredibly sensitive. Simple things, changes in your diet, your psychological stress levels, or exposure to everyday chemicals, they continuously alter this internal micro-ecology. What this proves is absolutely staggering. It shows that even the deepest, most intimate biological compartments of our physical existence are radically open to and entirely dependent on environmental influence. We are quite literally porous to the world around us. Now, this is exactly where Dubos' genius shines through. He drew a direct line from that microscopic level, gut flora constantly negotiating with a host body, straight to the macroscopic level of human populations interacting with urban layouts, socioeconomic structures, and natural landscapes. He basically proved that whether you're looking at a bacterial colony in the stomach or a sprawling human civilization embedded in a vast biosphere, they rely on identical feedback loops. The governing rules of adaptation are exactly the same across the board.
Therefore, the idea of biological and environmental isolation, it's an absolute illusion. You just cannot thrive by putting yourself in a hermetically sealed box, whether that's biologically or architecturally. Survival inherently depends on systemic resilience and relational balance. It's all about how well the system, whether we're talking about your personal immune system or your city's infrastructure, flexes, adapts, and balances in relation to the stress it faces.
And this brilliantly illustrates why Dubos' philosophy didn't just stay confined to a microbiology lab. His work forms the absolute bedrock, the fundamental component of the Marcenes HC, or human-centric conceptual framework. This is a powerful architectural and public health model. It prioritizes human flourishing, psychological safety, and physiological well-being by fundamentally acknowledging exactly what Dubos taught us. Humans are biologically hardwired to receive and respond to specific environmental inputs.
So, let's break down the three main pillars of this human-centric framework. First up is environmental responsiveness, which simply recognizes we are products of our total environment. Second is dynamic equilibrium. This favors empowering individuals rather than trying to completely insulate them with static control. And third is the danger of hyper-sanitization, which is a big warning against stripping our environments of all natural challenges. Together, these three pillars prioritize not just our physical health, but our psychological safety too.
Let's move to and see how this builds into actual physical design. How do architects and public health officials take these three theoretical pillars and actually construct buildings and cities that foster human resilience? Like, how do we physically design spaces that actively facilitate that successful adaptation René Dubos was talking about way back in 1965?
Well, let's look at that first pillar, environmental responsiveness. In the HCF framework, a building isn't just a shelter. It is an active environmental input. Architects literally build in responsiveness using things like circadian lighting. This mimics the natural progression of the sun to keep our internal biological clocks perfectly synced. They use biophilic design, integrating natural materials, plants, and organic forms, because frankly, our brains are wired to find safety in nature. And they heavily prioritize acoustic comfort, managing noise pollution to reduce that chronic, low-grade nervous system stress we so often just accept as normal.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast it creates between two very different design philosophies. Think about hyper-sanitized isolation. Traditional, over-medicalized engineering sought to completely insulate us. Just picture those sterile, windowless, hyper-climate-controlled concrete boxes. But the HEC framework warns that these sterile environments actually atrophy our natural immunological and psychological coping mechanisms. They make us weaker. Instead, the real goal is adaptive resilience, creating spaces that don't hide us from the world, but actively empower us to adapt to unavoidable stress in a healthy way.
And that brings us to the core, unifying philosophy shared by both René Dubos and the Marcenes HC framework. Whether we are building future health models, designing the cities of tomorrow, or navigating massive ecological crises, our ultimate goal should absolutely not be the impossible, somewhat arrogant dream of conquering nature. We can never fully control our environment. Instead, our goal must be fostering the wisdom and building the architecture to adapt in harmony with it.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder today. I want you to take a look around the spaces you live and work in. Are the environments you inhabit built merely to protect and isolate you from the outside world? Or are they beautifully designed to empower you to adapt to it? Understanding that distinction changes how we view literally every room we walk into. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, keep adapting, and I will see you next time.